Hello, and welcome to episode 53, How to Pitch the Media in 2021.
Welcome to the PR Playbook Podcast, the only podcast giving you actionable skills and advice you need to execute a strategic PR program. Warning: what you hear next may lead to brand awareness and increased sales and customer exposure. Now here's your host, Rinjini Joshua.
Hello, and welcome to episode 53. Thanks for joining me today. The pandemic has changed the way we do everything, especially the way we pitch the media. And I wanted to note that the media landscape is heavily been impacted by COVID. And just to kind of tell you what that looks like, I looked up some research, and Axios says that 14,000 media jobs were lost, with 16,000 additional newsroom jobs were lost in 2020. That's 30,000 jobs just in the media space alone. Now, Kristen Hare of Pointer also talked about 1,500 newsroom jobs for people who run printing presses, and as at least 50 publications that cut print in one way or another, whether it was furloughs, temporary cuts, decreases, or total shift. She even goes on to say that her numbers are on the low end and inaccurate. So this gives you a perspective of how the media was hit in 2020. Now, I bring this up because a lot of people talk to us about media relations and reaching out to the media and how to effectively reach the media. Well, it's hard, to be perfectly honest, because right now, everything's slowed down. So here's a few things that we saw come out of 2020. First, longer media cycles. So like we would pitch people and maybe it would take 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks for them to get back to us. The truth is we don't know what's going on. And a lot of people are working from home. They have distractions, surprise. They have families. People have COVID. That's another thing. So people are working around this mental exhaustion around a global pandemic. Name that for one, but then also our political situation in the United States is stressful for many. So we're all going through a compilation of emotions and issues. And I think one of the things to remember is that media and journalists are also people. So if you're having a trouble or a hard time getting through the pandemic, they probably are too. If you're, working at home with children that have to attend online virtual school, they probably are too. So I don't think this excuses the media from being a part of everyday life. And I think that's one thing that's really important to remember when we're working with them. Also, the digital space has become very noisy. So as you can imagine, more and more people are trying to get recognized in a very small space. We're looking at online only when a lot of these print publications are going down or closing up shop or taking time off. I mean, while they're still print publications, they haven't depleted completely. I think it's important to note that a lot of these media, these newsrooms, these editorial desks, they're less and less people. So their bandwidth is really, really low. So the amount of resources they have to allocate to different projects is really sparse. So when you do come to them with a pitch, you got to make sure that you're hitting on all cylinders. You will see a lot more freelance contributors as people have gotten laid off. As I mentioned, these big, massive numbers. As people have gotten laid off in the media industry, they are freelancing. They're still contributing. I'm not, saying journalists have not been hit hard. They have. But I think what's important to consider is that they could still be writing about 4 different publications and submitting articles to their editors, being paid piecemeal. So if these journalists are being paid that way, remember that you want to give them something worth writing about. You want to give them something worth paying attention to because they probably only have a few opportunities to submit their content. So, I think just one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is because we work with clients all the time and they're, very impatient sometimes, waiting for media response. I will say that is probably the biggest thing that we've noticed in 2020 is the delay in response from media. There's not a lot of lack of interest. That's not what I've seen. I think it's just people dealing with the current situation. A lot of people were hoping it would go away. I think a lot of people thought at the turn of the year that magically we would all be all right, but we are still going through this. And it's very likely we'll be going through this COVID era for the remainder of 2021. I have, very low expectations for us coming out of this quickly. So we do have to keep in mind that people are adjusting to a new form of working remotely from home, maybe partially from the office, maybe with kids around, maybe not, maybe they have stressed out because their family has COVID, maybe they have COVID. I mean, that COVID hits you pretty hard. And so, if you get it, you're out for like 2 weeks, if at best, so I think it's really important to just keep those things in mind when you're coming up with a PR and media strategy. I wanted to give you guys a few good, solid tips on when you do pitch the media, what you should be really focusing on. Number one, I think you should build a list. January is a perfect time to do this, of media targets that you want to hit throughout 2021, and start building relationships with them. And this means maybe emailing them conversationally, maybe engaging with them on Twitter, following their content, responding or commenting on their articles. I mean, that's how they get paid, is by people reading their work and commenting. So start engaging with them. Start becoming a name that they've seen, or a screen name maybe that they've seen. When you do pitch them, be personal. Not too personal. You don't want to get into their, nitty gritty of their everyday life, but personal to a point where you know what they cover and what their interests are from a journalistic perspective, and give them something valuable that you can offer them. Help them out. Be helpful, I think is number two, is be helpful as much as possible. If you could be helpful in a story that's not related to you, that's amazing. And then later, maybe they'll know that you're a helpful person and you're not just in it for the story. So they might open your email. So be personal, be helpful. Third is get to the point. Have a clear call to action. If you are pitching them, what do you want from them? What is it that you're looking for? And what do you want the outcome to be? Ask them clearly. This is what I'm looking for. And I was hoping that you could help me out because, I see that you're interested in drones. I don't know, just made that up. But get to the point. I'm sorry. Second to last, be patient. I think it's really important to understand, again, we're all human. And I think this is kind of the main theme of this podcast. Humanize your media relations. Be patient. Everyone's affected in different ways. If they get back to you and then they ghost you, they could have a reason. I mean, I've been ghosted so many times in the last year. So you may want to follow up maybe in a couple of weeks instead of like so quickly. And they might appreciate that. Oh yeah, thank you. I forgot, and we get that a lot. I meant to prioritize this, but something came up. So make sure that you are patient with these people. And again, they are humans, and just like us, they have different things going on in their life. And last but not least, this is like my old adage: follow up, follow up, follow up. Unless they've said no to you, I think it's fair to follow up. Now, the frequency of your follow up, it depends on how annoying you want to be. But typically, in the first couple of pitches, we'll follow up, within a couple of days, and then weekly. If they've said yes, then you give them some time to think about the pitch if they haven't already sent you questions or a request for a review, and maybe follow up weekly after that. So just be really mindful of those 5 points. So be personal, be helpful, get to the point, be patient, and follow up unless they said no. And I hope these are really helpful, short, quick tips. It gives you a little perspective on what's happening in the media. It's really interesting times. I know we're all having challenges in different part of our business development. So this is one area that I think you could use some of these really just tips to be mindful when you're dealing with the media pitching this year. And if you have any questions, suggestions for content for our podcast, email me at podcast@thesilvertelegram.com. And as always, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and be safe. We'll talk to you next time.